Good evening, Bishop. We're live.
Well, praise the Lord. Good evening, guests and my panelists. I'm honored that you're here with us tonight. It is a real privilege to have you here so that we can further discuss the importance of constructing a rod. The Bible says foolishness is bound in the heart of the child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from them. And so it is imperative tonight that as we discuss further our topic about raising children, for me, it was important today to just kind of take a moment and deal with the fact that again, the branch is much easier bent when it's tender while they're young. The older they get, the harder it is to change, and it's primarily because we grow from impulsive to habit. By the time we develop a habit, man, it's hard to change our behavior because that means what was an impulse has now set in, and that's why while the children are going through that little cute phase and they're really manifesting some of the tendencies that the enemy wants to establish in their lives as normalcy so that they can always be identified as that kind of person. You know, the child who rolls their eyes, the child who rebels, the child who is difficult to manage. All of those different type of behavior traits are things that the parent has to be willing to correct relatively, swiftly as soon as they see them. They got to start to creating and generating measures that allow them to actually assist the child so that that does not become a behavioral problem. Now, one of the things I did not get to say today was that when we allow behavioral problems to exist and to permeate in the child's life, then it starts making it difficult as the child ages to parent the child. Because now all of a sudden, what would have been relatively easy to manage while they were young and tender now becomes a habit. And once it sets in to a point of normalcy, it's almost like life is begging you to accept it. You're almost fearful to try to tamper with it because you sometimes think that it's going to alter their will. But I'll tell you something, the will needs to be bent so that they can line up with God's standards of righteousness. And that's going to be very critical tonight. So as we get started, I'm going to let each of you talk about the rod and what you thought it was. How did you interpret the rod from your perspective growing up, the way it was used against you? Here I am, a man talking about there are places in the word where we should have created pre-orientated disciplines so that the child and the parent could be held accountable. Isn't it something we want the legislative branch of our government, the law enforcement agencies, we want them to be accountable to the principles or the standards they use in handling us. Am I right? Be it giving us a ticket or breaking in our homes or whatever. We want them to be accountable, but then they want us to be accountable to the law. So parents should be willing to deal with their children based upon pre-established standards and regulations so that there's more safety and there's more correspondence. Now, to begin our discussion tonight, here's what I want to do. The Bible says that a child left to himself will bring his mother to shame. I don't know if you all heard the broadcast earlier today, but I talked about how when the woman cuts the umbilical cord, that is the time to release the child from the womb. That means that the child has transitioned because they're ripe. They're ripe. I'm using the word ripe from the perspective of ripe for the appointment of transition. When it comes down to training, if a child is really trained the way that we should, really, I think the Bible was expecting for us to have the child trained in readiness to embrace life from a mature perspective between ages 12 and 14. 15 would have been a grace period. So what we've done in this society by being so relaxed and numb when it comes down to raising our children, we've allowed the children to sometimes go 18 years and still not be ready for life. You know what I mean? So what I did was I drew back this passage from verse 17 of chapter 15 in Luke, where it says, and when he came to himself, he said. The Greek language there actually implies that the Father had actually planted in him the foundation of selfhood. That's one of the reasons why this was a secure father. The prodigal son's father, he wasn't worried about the guy losing, watch this, the essence of himself to stuff. He needed to get that behind them. You know, sometimes a child is so different from the last child you raised until you just really got to kind of use some measures that corresponds with their manifest to get their attention. And so he gave him what he asked for. And in the hog pen, when he came to himself, he said, now self, the problem with today's society is a lot of our children don't have self to come to because they've never been trained. Is that a clear point? Do you all understand that? And when there's no self to come to, that's why there's so many murders. That's why you see it random where teenagers are killing each other. Young kids are shooting, and violence, crime is rampant, you know, throughout our streets because the parents are not taking the time to teach the children about the self, the essence of self, who you are. You know, the three S's of self: self-concept, self-worth, self-esteem, so that they don't go out the door looking for their value. They leave home knowing what their value is. He said, I'm better off back home, watch this, as a slave with my dad than I am here in the depravity of society. And that's what they need to know when they come to themselves. So what I want to do to get it started is let you all talk, you know, just based upon what you've heard me say there. I think you get a sense of what I'm driving for here. From your own perspective, how do you see that? Just take whatever aspect of it you desire.
Okay, well, a few things, Bishop. One, when you initially started talking about that rod, I know forever, you know, we heard that saying, spare the rod. I mean, it's biblical too, spoil the child. And
Yes.
that rod represented something totally different than building character.
Yes.
It was basically a strap to your backside. So I grew up knowing that scripture, and I was afraid of it because I knew that rod meant something different, you know, as far as spankings. So, you know, just to hear it from this way, you know, through the wisdom that is speaking now, you know, just building the rod, which includes more than just reprimanding the child. It's basically training the child for their future.
Yes.
You know, because if you train them now, then chances are you won't spend a lot of time training them in the future or learning the hard way, them having to learn so many life lessons the hard way. So I just wanted to chime in on that one particular part for now.
Okay.
For me, growing up with that same scripture was used so much: spare the rod, spoil the child. And it was very much used to justify using, you know, physical beatings or harm, you know, to the child. And to me, that it never really added up because God don't really deal with us like that. You know, it doesn't really add up. And I remember as I got older, I heard another lady who felt like she was maybe wiser than the average Christian said that, you know, it's not beating a child with a belt. You're supposed to beat it with a wooden spoon. That a wooden spoon is what the correct rod is. And I was like, okay, that don't sound right either. But so this teacher really does help clarify what makes sense and what I can look back. You were asking, you know, about our personal experiences or our thoughts about it. Is I think for me growing up, I had both. We had the physical, I call it abuse because I really believe it was the physical abuse that was justified by the church.
Yeah, there you go. You
know, and then we also had the training. My father was very intentional about teaching and training and directing us, you know, us meaning the kids in the house, as to where we were supposed to go. But we had a lot of both. And the physical um, whippings or spankings, whatever you want to call them, to me, they got in the way of being able to hear his voice when he was giving that correct. It was a lot harder to receive what he was saying because I'm still thinking about how you treated me, the other day. So that I mean, it can create a conflict.
Right.
So that's just my thoughts on that concerning the rod.
I tend, Bishop, first of all, good evening, ladies. Good evening, Bishop.
Yes, sir.
I tend to think of Psalms 23. We hear that word rod pop up there. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
No comfort in that other rod.
Maybe there's a typo in my Bible. Let me read that again. Anyway, that said, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
Mm-hmm.
To do a little study on shepherds, I'm just going to kind of chop through it real quick because there's so much to be found and understood there. If you understand the job of the shepherd and what they have to do, if you will go to Scotland and to actually see a shepherd, they have that rod and that staff, they comfort me. So how's the rod and your staff comfort me? Well, one way was whenever one of the sheep were like children, they all over the place. Whenever one of the sheep would go off and start going somewhere they had nowhere to go, they were violating the boundaries that were established by the shepherd. There's a couple things. Well, one, that one staff, I don't want to get it mixed up. One's a rod, one's a staff. But the one with the hook on the top, the hook, he took that hook, hook it around that sheep's neck and pull it right on back in. And that was a form of comfort because it was pulling the sheep into safety. It wasn't, what you didn't go out to the field and see 40, 50 dead sheep laying around because the shepherd done zapped out and just started whooping all the sheep. That didn't happen. That's not how that went down. You can see the visual. That's not what it meant. It meant that these are the tools that I'm using to develop boundaries in you that are going to be congruent with your purpose, your nature, and who you are. If you're a sheep, you don't need to be over there in that muddy, dirty water over there. That's not congruent with who you are as a sheep. So let me pull you back on in this way. Now there were some times that the shepherd would take that rod and he popped that sheep on the head of the noggin, and the sheep looking around and he come on, get it back together again. But it didn't take a whole lot. It was little hello, wake up over here, let's go this way. And there's so many other examples there with shepherd about how when the sheep get sick, they take them, and sometimes, I ain't gonna use that one. That sounds too much like abuse. Bishop, the one when the sheep keep wandering off, they break one of his legs, so it quit wandering off, and they carry the sheep with the broken leg. They fix his leg, and they carry him where he got to go. This is called a form of restriction. Let's call it a form of restriction. I'm restricting you from going where you want to go, and you're gonna be with me. You ain't staying at home by yourself all week for the summer. You come with me. You come to my job. I'm a self-contractor, so you come with me to work. That's what my daddy did me. He said, "Oh no, my daddy left the first week of summer. My coming of age summer. He left, and as soon as he left, the van went down the street. The patio door was open in the back in the basement. I had all my buddies coming up in the house, and the thing with my dad, he had this old van. You could hear it coming from like a mile away. You knew the engine." And we in there playing the pool table down in the basement. I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be an awesome summer. Now the folks ain't supposed to be in my house now. And I'm about to hit that pool, but I hear that van coming down the street. I'm like, what? So it's impossible. He just left. No, I'm a kid. You're kids. You think they gone, they gone. Apparently, no, I'm not gone yet. I'm coming back. I forgot something. He done forgot something, turned around and came back, and I got all these kids in my house. Well, needless to say, I saw a different form of the rod that day. That was more than on the head rod. But what I'm saying is, my dad was trying to create boundaries. So he said, since you want to be like this, you're just going to come with me and you're going to learn to trade over the summer. And you're going to be with me. And I'm going to restrict your access to be as free as you were before you messed up. And I'm going to carry you with me everywhere. That was also another form of rod. And the whole time we went out there every day, DC, Maryland, Virginia, my father would talk to me about putting my spirit out in front of me, going ahead and visualizing where I wanted to be. He started instilling certain things in me during that time period. Sometimes with kids, you got to do that. Take them out of their comfort zone. My son loved this dog on PlayStation 4. I grew up on Atari 2600. If you're about my age, you know what I'm talking about. I love my video games. Not as much now as it did then, but he's 5 times worse than me. If he can't get in that video game, he ain't have a conniption fit. So I had to create some boundaries. I had to put the rod in effect. Talk to him about why it's important that his time have an assignment, right? And I took the controller and put it up. He woke up one morning. I had told him, I think I told you guys the other day. I said, I need you to wash the dishes now. He said, I'm gonna get it now. Midnight came, dishes ain't washed. The next day he came up looking for his phone and his PlayStation 4 control remote. He says, Dad, can I get that now? I said, oh, you want that now? You can't wash dishes now, but you want the controller now. Okay. Right. Well, you're not going to get it now because I didn't get it now either. But anyways, I think about Psalms 23. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And so it's not spoken of as a war weapon. You know, when you're beating the Pope out of somebody, it's spoken of as something that's used as a tool to bring restriction, create boundaries that were congruent with the purpose of the child.
So let's tie this before we lose the essence of the previous lesson. Help me tie this to the law of double reference. You remember we were in Mark 9. And the reason why we ended up where this principle of foolishness is in the heart of the child, remember Jesus asked the Father, after the lunatic manifested in the child's, out of the child's life, Jesus asked the Father, how long has he been like this? And he said, from his childhood. So the point then came, it was a spillover, if y'all can follow me, y'all got to help me with this, from Matthew 16, where Jesus asked the disciples, who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And God spake or revealed through Peter that thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Then Satan, a spirit, did the same thing. And he starts to rebuking Jesus. And Jesus says to him, get thee behind me, Satan. Speaks to Peter, but he says unto Peter, get thee behind me, Satan. Now, the point being, we wanted the parents to understand tonight that your child does not necessarily possess a devil, or they're not a demon. But you got to get a hold to this behavior early, because the Bible says, the Bible locates it like this: to deal with being born in sin and shaped in iniquity, foolishness is bound in the heart of the child. So he tells us the rod of correction. So he's really, if God says my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, we know then that knowledge is going to be a swift part of the antidote of cure, right? So we got to have knowledge of the principles of righteousness instilled in them. Wouldn't you all have preferred having that as a child? Then, you know, I had some of the unlawful utensils on the stage with me Sunday. I don't know if you all got a chance to see them, but the most extreme I had was a set of jumper cables. So I didn't get a chance to demonstrate the jumper cable Sunday. My time, you know, I'm still feeling rushed, and I'm not all. One thing about adapting to a empty church is some weeks you can feel anointed. The next week you can feel like you're talking to the air. So I had all of these different measures and methods. Now, believe it or not, I had nothing on the stage that someone didn't endorse as a form of their punishment growing up. Would you believe I had poles the size of a huge curtain rod, about 4 inches thick? Someone got beat with something like that before, a pole 4 feet long. I had extension cords. I had hose pipes. I had belts. I had paddles. I had a bat. I had all of these things. I even have a big chain. So it's almost as if parents had this notion that was borrowed from slavery, is what I wanted to say. Yeah. That I brought you here, I can take you out of here. You know what I mean? So we heard that growing up. You keep on. I brought you here, I can take you out of here. Bottom line is, I never will forget, and I'll let you take it. My children were budding teenagers, and my son was probably the youngest of the three. Well, he's always been the youngest of the three, but I think he was just about a teenager. He just started. He's around 13 years old, and he followed some of my daughters to a place that we didn't even give them permission to go. And you know, early on, my middle child, Tia, she always had this notion that you could beat me, but you can't touch my siblings. That didn't matter what they did. It was okay for her to fight them, but it wasn't okay for me to spank them. On this particular occasion, I think I was chastening my son, and she came running down the hall. And boy, she looks at me and she said, "You better not hit my brother." She told me don't put my hand on her brother now. And before I knew it, I had her by her ankles. She was up in the air suspended. She was hanging. She was hanging. And she was literally still trying to fight me.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, now it was okay for her to fight her siblings, but it wasn't okay for dad to spank them. So my point is, so I sat down, I never will forget. So, you know, these lessons are born somewhere. For about 2 or 3 weeks, and she don't know this, for about 2 or 3 weeks, that thing was really in my heart. Now, it grieved me that my response out of spontaneity was to just arrest her. Now, I would love to have been able to restrain her and say, "Look, sweetie, you better stay out of this." But my blood, you know how the parent, without having pre-established disciplines, pre-orientated disciplines, I wasn't accountable. They weren't accountable, but it would have been my fault if anyone had got injured. Well, I acted out of spontaneity because during that time, a parent felt insulted. You know, it's like, "Oh, you just insulted parenthood at the highest degree. There is no extremity that you cannot, that you can be shielded from." You see where I'm at? And so that night, after everything was settled, because Denise was real quiet, you know, she was like, she supported me, disciplined the child, but not going that far. Well, I didn't intend to go that far, but when you go that far, now everybody leaves you by yourself. So now the father's isolated, all the children along with mom. And so the father has to deal with all the grief. I never will forget. So I started praying. And about 2 weeks later, because I carried that grief in my heart and I never could find the words to explain to her my sorrow for my response. And that's when God started to reorientating me to the rod. So I started investigating on my own. I started looking, doing research. And I realized then, man, you mean to tell me I've actually almost raised my children to adulthood before I realized that wasn't the rod. Now, you all got to agree with me. All of us, blacks in particular now, those parents believe that if you spare the rod, that means getting a butt cutting. I mean, you know, I'm talking about a real bruised down beating. I mean, it wasn't necessary. Now, at least I did this. I made my children bend over so that I would only hit them on their buttocks. You know, peradventure, she was going to do something different. She's going to make you go to the other extreme if you touch her other sibling. She never could stand, even as a little kid, little baby girl. She thought she had to fight for the other kids. Now, these kids fight for themselves. But now she just, it was her battle to take up if you touch her siblings. So, but this particular time, man, I was so grieved, and God started to give me revelation. Just like when I was, you remember when my wife and I was separated, I told you God said he was going to reorientate me to manhood first, and then he was going to teach me about husbandry. So I had to relearn. And I literally understood it now from a different perspective. Years later, foolishness was in all of our heart. Am I right about it? I mean, there are some things I got into. You all heard me talking about pulling the shotgun on. How y'all feel about a young man, your bishop, having it noted in his history, in his biography, that he pulled a shotgun on his grandmama because she wouldn't give him because she wouldn't give him a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I felt like if she was the only thing standing between me and the peanut butter jelly sandwich. So that's foolish, isn't it? I mean, but think about it. Your child, as handsome and cute and sweet and precious as they are, they can get into some stuff. Now, you all remember being children. I mean, I know we're talking about the parents punishing us, but what about the foolishness, the principle of foolishness that was in our heart that seemed so demonic? Y'all quiet. Okay. So Trina, I'm gonna let you talk because you like you're ready. But now, what if I told you this? I noticed I had a fetish with guns later on. So just like I pulled the gun on my grandmother, I almost killed a kid in the community for stealing plums off of our tree. He could have asked, he wouldn't ask, but he was there stealing plums off the tree. And I eased the window in the back of the house up because my parents were working. I went and got the rifle, and and just as he was getting ready to load them into his bag, I told him, I said, Jamaica, I'm telling you, this kid literally, I ain't gonna tell you what all he did, but he froze like a statue. He was scared to move. He saw that gun aiming out at the window. So it's like, see the foolishness that's bound in the heart of the child. Though as children, we can get into some stuff. Now on Sunday morning, I was gonna be the first child on the altar praying. That's the thing. So nobody, if you weren't with me during the week, you didn't know what I was capable of on Sunday. You see what I'm saying now? And so that's the thing that got left out. And so now all of a sudden, you're in the church wondering, how do these kids get so bad? Well, it's what happens before service and after service.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead on.
I was the third child, and I think I saw the first two make so many mistakes. You know, it was I was pretty sharp. As in, you know, I'm not going to go that route that they're going. So I didn't do a lot of wild and crazy things. I think it just wasn't in my character. But I would lie to avoid any trouble. You know, I didn't never want no trouble. And so I would lie to avoid trouble, which would then get me in trouble. And so that was the biggest thing that I had to contend with, as far as just that natural tendency to gravitate towards foolishness. So I don't know. I have to really think back through my childhood to pick up. But like I say, those first two ahead of me, they had a lot going on. And so the last two of us, you know, we was pretty smooth sailing. Our parents didn't have a lot of trouble out of us. It was the first two. I saw way too many butt whoopings and holes in the wall, and you know, all the foolishness. I said, I don't want no parts of that.
How would you like to have had an elder sister who thought she was your mother? And every time you look, because she's dwelling with you and she's just 4 years older, I mean, she thought she was like Big Mama.
Well, we ran, I was crazy. We had an older sister and they would leave her in charge, but we ran her crazy. Well, she would run in the room and lock the door.
Our big sister almost ran all three of us crazy. I tell you the truth, she was something else. She was a pistol.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, this you're talking about, you say they want to lose the essence of where we're transitioning out of the law of double references. You know, it's amazing. It's always been amazing to me. You don't ever have to teach a child to lie. Reminds me of a video I saw on social media, a little baby girl still in diapers and messed around and got into the bottle of Hershey's chocolate in the refrigerator. So Mom Dukes caught her. There's chocolate in her hair, chocolate on her face, chocolate all her, you know, caught red-handed, caught chocolate-handed. And Mama walked in there and said, "Did you do this? Who did it? And chocolate on her face. And she just, I don't know. It wasn't me, Mama. It wasn't you. Are you lying to me? Watch this. No, Mama. No, I'm not lying, Mama. Not me. Not me. And then started pointing at the dog. The dog.
Are you serious?
But the humor in that is one thing, but it's to understand that, you know, we popped out the womb for the most part, lying and deceitful and doing things that get that ride on you, you know. And it just always has been amazing to me. You don't have to teach a child how to lie or to hide or to cheat or to even steal. They walk in the store empty-handed, come out and pack a bubble gum and a Snickers bar. You're like, where you get that from? They'd have just picked it up and walked them out the store. You know, and there's some situations where child just don't know about situations they can get away with it, and they do it. And so it's not that the child has a demon, it's just there's a part of that child already innately in them that has to come out, that has to be dealt with, that has to be disciplined. And while they're still tender, while they're still young, that is the most opportune time to do it. My thing with child rearing is not allowing the child to understand why they're being disciplined. You know, that's just as important as building a rod. Let them know why. What are not just the repercussions from you? What are the repercussions in society?
Well, that's the rod. That's one of the main ingredients to the rod. I was about to say, Elgin, I was about to ask Cindy. So then pre-orientate. What do you think about the need for orientating in advance, making sure that there is a clarity in how things are going to be handled where behavior is concerned?
Mm-hmm. I think there is a big need, especially in this day and time, because society don't view that rod the same way it was viewed as, you know, with us as children. So you have to be mindful and you have to be careful. And your strategy to discipline and in teaching your children nowadays has to be different. You know, you have some parents that says, oh, I'm going to whip you, even, you know, just they can call the cops to come get me. And I go to jail. You know, I've heard parents say that, but the truth of the matter is there's not a whole lot of wisdom in that. I mean, if you mean it sincerely, there's not a whole lot of wisdom in that. And one of the ways I think is most beneficial for parenting now is doing away with so much of that rod, because you didn't get it worked for us, but it's not going to work today.
Did it?
So,
Did it?
It had its.
Oh, Cindy, let me tell you something. This is going to be good now, Trina. You know what? I see you. I know you ain't finished it. I'm not through with you, but I'm not. Anyway, I did some research. Do you realize that rod didn't work for slavery? All it did was made them bitter. It taught them, it made them angry. It made them inward. You know, one of the reasons why anger got so popular among Blacks who were freed, I discovered, was because they had so much pent-up anger in them, Cindy, for being held and restrained and beaten over and over and over and over without, you see what I'm saying? So it did not make them better, nor did it help them to be more submissive. It made them more
rebellious.
Rebellious. Yeah, they were looking for measures and means, but go ahead.
Yeah, so let me clarify that from my personal experience, because a lot of times I'm talking from my personal
you were bad.
experience.
You were bad when I met you. You were still bad.
Yeah, I was, but you know what? I learned. I'm like Trina. I had 5 siblings who preceded me in adulthood, and they feel totally different about how they were reprimanded as children. You know, I didn't get a lot of whippings or spankings, but the 2 that I got, and I elaborated on them last Sunday, I remember them to this day. And both of those whippings made me a better person. Now, I'm not saying that it worked. I don't believe in 100% all the way across the board. I believe that there are some variations in what works and what does not work. The same way I believe that your approach and your child, or how you reprimand your children, is probably different for each of those children. And so I just have to stand by my conviction of what I say. So if I was tied to a tree and whipped in slavery, I'm sure I would have some rebellion too. But when my mother said, the reason why I had to spank you this time, Cindy, because you have to learn to listen, I never had to get another spanking. It worked. I got one from my mom and one from my daddy. So it worked. Now, did it make me a perfect child? No, but it taught me the importance of obedience. If it didn't teach me anything else.
So you did learn how to listen.
I learned how to listen. Yes, I did. But you know, the Bible says that we was born in sin and shaping in iniquity. So, you know, thinking about double reference, sometimes parents forget that, you know, that we were born in sin and we were shaping in iniquity. And when you are reprimanding your child, sometimes it's not the child, it's that spirit that's in the child.
Right.
And you're rebuking the wrong thing, and you're reprimanding the wrong thing, and you're punishing the wrong thing. So to your point, Bishop, do I think how important is it to preference how your purpose for reprimanding? That's so important. I'm a life coach, and one of the things I learned early on, and I don't, I'm not particularly favorable of coaching individuals, more like in a group session, but one of the things I learned very early on is that you have to, part of coaching is the answer is within the person. So a lot of times if you ask your child, if your friend had done the same thing, what advice would you give your friend? If you ask your child, do you understand what you did? And if you had a second chance or the opportunity to do it again, what would you do different? Now, there are a whole lot of people around me, they're probably saying, well, that don't work, but you don't know unless you try it. And then you ask a child, what do you think I should do, to you, or what type of punishment do you think you should get? And let that child give that punishment. Because there are lessons, life lessons in, well, not coaching, but in disciplining your children with some structure and some meaning behind it, rather than just the ride only.
Okay. All right. Elgin, Trina, y'all got it.
Go ahead, Trina.
Well, I was thinking a lot of things. I think as far as the spankings, I think it matters it's different for individual people. Different children respond different ways. But the idea, I do think it all stems back to slavery. And I think it's an easy way to go about trying to discipline a child, but it's not essentially the most effective way. Because if you think about it, you can there's a difference between punishing somebody, trying to hurt them or give them punishment, versus there being consequences. Those are not necessarily one and the same. And I believe that for children, their actions should yield consequences.
Right.
Whether those be natural consequences or something negative, which is what I think parents try to do with the spanking, is you give something negative to deter them from making that same decision. But the problem comes in when you're physically harming that child. I don't care how you slice it. Right. Hitting somebody is harmful. And if your child were to hit somebody, you would punish your child for hitting somebody. Right. And so I think it just doesn't make sense when you think about it, about the big picture, like what are you really teaching? Why are you dishing this type of punishment, or this type of, or is it a consequence, or are you just trying to give the child something negative for what happened?
Trina, one of the things that my studies show, and it's the reason why the message is huge. It's long. I won't get a chance to teach it all in this season, but now, and it is in a book. But what if I told you that another thing that I discovered was that most of the beating was for the satisfaction of the beater, the punisher? Do you all realize that one of the reasons why I was able to really investigate the rod is because the rod that God was talking about takes time to set up. Takes a lot of consideration, takes a lot of observation, etc., because each child is different. But punishment, the way that we learned it from slavery, was based upon the satisfaction of the master. It was to exact pain in front of everyone else, so that they would learn why not do the same thing. Now, and all they did was conspired as a result of that, tried to figure out ways to get free, because you can't take a man's will to desire for freedom. Now, here's what I want to point to, Elgin. I made the statement, we are an audiovisual culture in a social media age that can drastically impact the development of our youth if we decide to use social media tools constructively. What is your view of that?
Now, you saying if we decide to use social media tools constructively, they can be an asset to us? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. We're an
Um,
we are an audio visual culture. So we progress. Modernization through technology has given us the privilege of audio visuals on another level. You see that
well,
prehistoric, everything else is prehistoric by comparison to now.
right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely in a digital age now, things are way different. I guess it's unfortunate I can speak to the negative side of that first, because I have seen on social media the shaming that some of the parents do to their kids, when their kids step outside the lines of what they want them to do. They'll videotape them getting their hair cut like George Jefferson on the air. Some of them, I've seen some of the parents literally whoop their kids with a belt on social media for everybody to see. And there's a lot of shaming that goes in that, because that kid has to go back to school and still with his friends. It's a lot to it. So that's a negative way in which it's done. I'm right now, for the life of me, I can't come up with a positive way off the top of my head. Not to say that there aren't any, but I can't think of one. Maybe one of the ladies can bail me out with this.
Yeah, well, here's what I'm saying, ladies, in case it's a confusing question. The thing is, the lesson implies that images that we put before our children should be intentionally selected. We should not just give them the social media tool without supervision.
Most definitely.
We need to select the images that we put before them intentionally so that it corresponds with a life of wholesomeness in order to reinforce God's promises of abundant life to them. So I'm here saying, if we use it, the audio visuals, see, that's the work is done for the parent who wisely uses the social media tool. Now, any of you can address it if you hear exactly where I'm coming from.
I see where you're coming from now,
I'm a big
Bishop.
proponent of social media. I'm a big proponent of technology in teaching children, because it's just like with anything else. I mean, whether you're doctors don't still practice medicine the same way in this day and time as they practiced back then. And teachers don't teach the same way they taught back then. So life is all about progression. But with progression and with technology, like you said, there has to be structure. I don't believe that you should give your children that iPad and give them free reign or give them that tablet. But I think if you use it as an instrument to teach, then I think it can be a very, very good tool for them. I mean, only in a lot of the Black communities, we view technology as something evil a lot of times. And that's mainly because we don't want to take the time you have to be with that child, and you have to teach that child, what sites you have to set up parental parameters when you give your child an iPad. You just don't give it to them and let them go wild with it, but there are restrictions, and you have to take the time to set those restrictions in order. I mean, they design these things for the purposes to be a tool or a resource. But like anything else, if you don't use something in what it's intended for, then a lot of times it proves to be either non-fruitful, is not fruitful or useful, or it's abused. That's what I was trying to think of. So I think it can be a very good, tablets and iPads and YouTube, all of those things can be used as a resource to teach your children, but it should not take the place of parenting. So hear me, because there'll be someone typing in a few minutes, just a few minutes. I'm not saying substitute. It is a tool. It can be an asset. It can be a resource when used properly.
Cindy, Trina used, I think she mentioned one time in one of the class settings that we did in Grovetown, something that her and Nick did with their children using the tablet, or you remember that, some of the gadgets. I think there was something that you structured for the kids to be able to go on and do, or it was an allowance that if something you allowed them to do to I don't know, but some type of research or some type of scriptural something. You may not be able to remember it now.
I don't remember specifically what you're referring to, but I do know that we have used those devices for them to like we did you may be talking about, we did do like I want to say a Bible study, but kind of like a devotion regularly. And so we could send that out electronically so that everybody could study it in their own time. And then, you know, whenever we come back together to have those discussions.
That's it.
Okay, I was gonna say that might be what we have done that. And over the years too, whenever issues arise, I mean, very often we have them. Y'all see this dog photo bombing.
That's okay.
We have attachment issues to me. But also another thing is that we would have them to do research independently. And I tell them all the time, I can't police you 100%. You have to help me be accountable to protect your own future. There's no way I can know everything that's going on all the time, and I'm not going to exhaust myself in that effort because it's impossible. And so the best we can do is have some safeguards, like their privacy settings on the phone. And it's not necessarily, I know there are some tools where you can like have their access to the Wi-Fi cut off at a certain time and all that. And some people probably can use that. I'm not quite that savvy. But if I say you're done with the phone at 8 o'clock, you're done at 8 o'clock. You know, and that's pretty much how that goes. Or, you know, if you're as far as websites and things of that nature, I try to keep open communication with them. You know, your phone is subject at any time for me to see, you know, whatever is in there. I don't use that a lot because I feel like if you use it a lot, they just learn to delete, you know, things. So it's very random. I mean, it's very random that I will check. And I can remember when Camille was younger, because she was the first one we had to deal with all this technology with. This stuff didn't exist when we were coming up. So it's like no precedent for how to deal with it. Right. And so one thing we did with her is I would tell her, if you change your password, I need to know what your password is. Right. She changed her password one time and I couldn't get in her phone. And so she lost her phone for a specific amount of time. I told her from the beginning, I'm not a fan of let me take it indefinitely. And when I feel like it, I give it back. No, you got, 2 weeks or a month or whatever that was. And she don't tell me now, but that's been very recent that she doesn't tell me if ever she changes her password. And then the other Charity learned from that. So when she got her iPhone, she made sure we all put our fingerprint in it so that, her dad and I can have access. We didn't have to ask. She knew. And that builds a level of trust.
That's good.
Too. So, I mean, we're still trying to navigate it. I mean, it's uncharted waters for a lot of us. And I'm sure Elgin probably has, because he's got kids in that age range too. But I mean, it's uncharted water. You shaking your head. We all trying to figure it out,
I was just in our class. I'm doing a home training right now for a particular assignment. And we broke out little groups. And the young lady I was in the group with, she's got a 9-year-old, and she was talking about all these restrictions she's got on his phone, his PlayStation. I said, "Oh, whoa, how do you do all that?" I don't know. We really need a class on this stuff because from the video game to the cell phone, all there can be restrictions on all of that, and also to monitor what they're viewing. And it's not always an intent to go and do something or to view something they don't want to view. The way that they're bombarding the social media airways right now, you can just cut your phone on and something pop up and jump out at you. You don't even say. I've seen everything from people being murdered, literally, in other countries. So, and these are images coming across. So we need to really garrison our youth up and garrison around them and make sure that we are doing everything we can to protect what is going in the eye gates and the ear gates, and to ensure that they're seeing things that are going to be profitable for their growth and not destructive. Well,
listen, let's spend the rest of the time building the rod. So I'm going to give each of you the opportunity. It's three. We're going to deal with 3 rods. One of you can deal with the first component. Excuse me, 3 components. The first component. One can deal with the second component. The other deal with the third component. The first component is to establish God as the chief source and the central standard of their lives. To establish God as their source, at chief source and central standard. Who wants to take that one first?
I'll take that.
Go ahead, Trina.
That is so important. And I think that's something that has to be done over a period of time through conversation and over them having to learn the word of God for themselves. For my children, when they have had things that they have enjoyed or blessings or just things in their life that are good, we as a family, we always try to point them back to, this doesn't happen by chance. This is a result of what God has provided for us. Tithing, I think, is a big part of that. It's a very important concept. That process of sowing and reaping, teaching children at a very young age to put God first. Your life has to stem from your belief in God and your relationship with God. These things, good things aren't happening to you because you're such a good person. They happen to you because God provides. God is our source as a family, and God is your source. And you can always tap into that source. You have the liberty to ask God as a child of God. You're a Christian. You made that decision for yourself. You have the right and the privilege to go to God with your cares and do that. And for us, it comes down to teaching them how to pray about those things that are your concern. Whatever issues are going on in your life, God is concerned about those. Nothing is too big or too small that God doesn't care for you. He always cares for you, and he instructs us to give him those cares, to cast those cares, but count on God. And as far as that central standard, that's a constant conversation that we're having. Other people make decisions and choices for whatever reason they choose. They may make choices because that's what their friends are doing, or because that's people they see and admire, celebrities. They might be imitating that, but your standard has to come from what God says about you. You're a unique person. You are not in this world to mimic other people. There's only one you. And it's only your job to fulfill that purpose of being you. And sometimes that means your choices are different from your friends' choices. They're not going in the same direction that you're going.
Wow.
And so you have to have that boldness as an individual to understand that your standards are based upon what God says about you, not what anybody else says or thinks about you. And that's easier said than done. But when it's said over and over again, and there's so many conversations about it, and to me, we're going to keep putting it in until I hear it coming back out. And then when I hear that child giving me back those beliefs and giving me back those words and accepting it on their own, or sometimes I overhear them counseling other people, saying those things. Both girls, I hear it sometimes, them talking to their friends, and kind of putting it in their own words, saying, well, you just got to be yourself. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Make that choice because it's right for you, not because, everybody else is doing it. You do what's right for you. And so that's why I jumped on that chief source and central standard, because that is, we try to live by that in this household. That's the only way I know to teach these kids, because there's so much that they can get into. The devil has so many things out there for them.
Yeah.
And if we don't try to direct them from home,
Yeah.
the competition is no competition. Satan's going to win.
Right. So that's, I'm sure you got a lot more you can say. We'll tie it all together before we finish. I guess, Senator Elgin. So number 2, you heard what Trina said about the central standard and the central source, chief source. Number 2 is teaching the child to embrace uh, their purpose and their uniqueness, or the uniqueness of their design and purpose. Um, that should become the focus of their destiny, because A, that is how they glorify God, and B, that is how they serve society. I thought that was real good. When this part came to me as a revelation, then I realized God was really serious about the rod. This is when you put that fact, when you factor that in, it corresponds with the first, doesn't it? Either of you can take it.
It really does correspond with the first, because when you lay that good foundation for your children through the word of God, teaching them who God is and what God means to them, that is the foundation in which everything else is built upon. And as far as children, and I said it on Sunday, and I feel very strongly about it, you have to pay close attention to your children. And as you pay close attention to your children, the Spirit of God will reveal their little talents and their gifts to you and what they're good at. And from that, I mean, you may have one child who likes to dance. I mean, it's not a bad thing, because,
Right.
you know, dancing can be very artsy and it can be used to glorify God. You may have one that's good in sports. You may have another one that likes to read, you know, and I you know, spend a lot of time with my little godchildren, and there is one, the baby, I can read to little baby Joey. That one will let you read to him for like 2 hours straight. You will get tired before he gets tired. I mean, he will go and get another book after another book, until now, Bishop, talking about technology. I'm so glad on YouTube, some of the same stories that I read to him,
You can,
you can find somebody who has gladly posted it on YouTube. And you know, once he catches the wordings, you know, the wordings are the same, then he will listen to that. And so now I can put him in the high chair. But my other two, they are just so different. You know, I have to sit and I cannot draw a lick. But little Ari, you know, she is always bringing pictures to me. And then one day she asked me, could I draw a head for her? Well, when I was in art school, that's the last thing I learned how to draw was a head, and I didn't do good. It looked like a pear or something, you know. And but she's into this art thing, you know. And then Nori is totally different. And so I'm always, whenever I spend time with them, and I hope this is tying it in, you know, we have prayer time, we have confession time, we have dedicated time where I'm just trying to enhance the giftings that I see in them. Like one don't like to lose at all, you know, can't stand to lose, and that one will cry and get upset. So now I'm just trying to use that in a positive way, that you will not win all the time. It does not make you a loser. You are a winner because you have a winner's mindset. And in this particular game, it may not be your chance, your time to win, but you don't give up and you don't quit and you don't cry. You get back in that game and you learn how to play it better and better. And just through that, I have these little games around here. And today that one beat me twice and I didn't let her. I said, oh my gosh, this little game, that board game that we play in with Uno, and she's learning to outthink me, you know. So I just think, Bishop, it is so important to realize that it's not a one size fit all with children.
yeah.
And God made them individually, you know, they're unique and they have their own unique gifts. And I do not teach the little ones that's in my life as a one size fit all, because I learned at an early age that I'm not like not one of my sisters, you know, it's 5 of us and we're all so different. And God chose me out of 6 siblings, being the baby, to take and move over 600 miles away. And he meant stay there.
Wow.
Because the door never opened for me to go back. So I have a unique experience that they can never, ever share. They don't understand the closeness I have with people that's not my blood relatives. They never thought that you could live in another state so far away from family and friends. So I'm just saying that to say you never know what plans God has for each child, but begin to just ask the Lord to show them those special gifts.
You notice, Cindy, in keeping with the uniqueness and the purpose of it, Jeremiah was a very frustrated young man during the time that he discovered that God had actually ordained him a prophet. In the heavenly realm before he even put him in the earth. He said, we had ordination service. So you're going to prophesy. Jeremiah was at a point where he was against prophesying any longer because he was tired of prophesying to the people about and their responses. Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verses 3 through 14, you see where God called Moses. I like to say that, Moses. But now Moses discovers that out of all of his siblings, the hand of God is on his life. You see that? He raises him up in the house of the devil, y'all. And that's why I oftentimes say, we make a great deal to do about abortion, etc., but you can't kill purpose. God has never allowed purpose to be defeated nor destroyed. And the same way it was with Jesus, there was a decree to kill the 2 and under, but they couldn't. You can't. I'm telling you right now, he makes provision. Excuse me.
I was thinking about that today. I figured this was not even a lesson to bring that up, but I was thinking about purpose today, and I was thinking about Saul before he became Paul, and I was like, you cannot kill purpose and destiny. Out of all of the bad that he did, God still had an ordained purpose for his life. But I was studying that for the lesson because I tried to, bring in a different perspective, but that was the one I wanted to talk about tonight.
And he's in the lesson. But you could give all of these examples to those who are listening because they need to see that we're all born to be what? The unique self, that person that you've been graced for. I think, what is it? Romans chapter 11 is a good chapter for this. Chapter 12, is it? Where Paul says, I beseech you. Yeah, beginning with verse 3.
Romans 12.
12, and where he says all of us have been given a certain or unique kind of grace. All right. Now, Elgin, with that said, number 3, establish orientated disciplines. Now, we said that abuse is inevitable without the discovery of purpose. Well, you got to make the child in this particular part of the rod aware of corrective measures and consequences that each type of behavior will merit, and B, you got to stick to it.
Yep.
You got it? Now, there are 2 types of orientated disciplines. The first is behavioral correspondence. I don't think a lot of parents are familiar with behavioral correspondence. And then the second is punishable penalties. I think we just spent the majority of the time tonight talking about punishable penalties. But we did not deal with it from the perspective of misdemeanors and felonies.
Yeah.
And so you take this one and help us to see how we can use behavioral correspondence to escape punishable penalties and all these other things so that we can live a life that's in keeping with our unique design and purpose.
Yeah, you were talking about this Sunday. That talked about measuring out behavioral correspondence in the terms of misdemeanors and felonies, and I thought it was really good because if you deliver right and you're able to communicate it properly to the child, you're also teaching them about society and life. You're also teaching them, hey, when you leave outside these four walls here, you're going to have to deal with a system very much similar to this. So the difference is them folk don't love you like I do. And so I'm able to love you and bring you back into good grace when you mess up so we can grow and get better. But out there, you may not get a second chance, So that misdemeanor might mess your life up for a long time. And so believe it or not, that's just something I heard that Sunday. I just started implementing that later on that night. Not necessarily the terms of misdemeanor and felonies yet, because I do want my son to understand it in those terms, but gradual progressions of discipline that are once again congruent with the child and the child's design, not congruent with the way I feel if I'm having a bad day or not. I'm having a great day, so it's okay. Yeah, go ahead and do what you want to do. But to be able to maintain that standard and not to bend on it Some of the parents do. I won't put it on the mamas alone. Some of the daddies like this too. Just can't see the child feel miserable. You just have a problem seeing the child cry. Can't, they just want to play the game. Just go play the game. Just can't. It's hard for you to digest that. But the reality is, there's going to come a time. I was talking to a young lady the other day, when you're not going to be here to bail that child out. And the best time for them to learn structured, standard behavior correspondence. The other one you use, we talk about punitive penalties, but behavior correspondence is right now. If you do A, you will get B. If you don't do C, then D is soon to follow. And to stick with it. And I think, let me be very transparent, it's been one of the hardest things for me, especially being a single parent. Because a lot of times you feel like you have to compensate for the other gender that's not there. They might bring something different to the situation that you won't bring, in my case, as a man, So I find myself having to balance being stern and being emotional and TLC. And most times I just like, Holy Spirit, help me. I don't know how to handle the situation. But back to behavior correspondence. If they do not correspond with the behavior that's been outlined for them, with that being said, that you have explained to them what the situation is, what is and is not going to happen, what the boundaries are, and what the repercussions are. If they cannot correspond with that, then you have to stick with that, whatever the repercussions were, so they know that it's not a joke. Because once again, get outside the four walls of the house, the law's not going to say, oh, you didn't know any better, don't worry about it, we'll let you go. No, just take the cuffs off him. He's all right. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to prosecute you to the fullest. And once again, the best time for our children to learn the system of the world system way it's set up is at home, because
yes,
we get to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. But the difference is we have a heart of love because it's our child. We're not correcting them. I forget this. I think it's a scripture. We're not correcting them just to correct them for pain and for our own pleasure. We're correcting them because we want them to grow once again in congruency with the purpose and the gifting that they have had, with the second part of the rod that Cindy was talking about, the things that correspond with their destiny.
yes.
But it's challenging, Bishop. I'm going to speak transparent as a parent, because we don't always see everything that the child is gifted to do or where they need to be, and the correspondence that we need to align ourselves up with when we're disciplining them is really challenging. I think my father's approach was to expose me to any and everything as early as possible. He exposed me to the piano. He exposed me to sports. He exposed me to writing camps over the summer. He exposed me to public speaking. He exposed me to just fixing engines. He's as many different things as possible, so he can pull out of me what it was that was going to work for me, so that he can address me in congruency with where he saw me going. And a lot of times it's difficult. We don't see it. Sometimes we want the kids to be who we are. We want them to be, I'm a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. That's just the way it is. And the kid's gifted to be an artist. I was an artist, you're going to be an artist. The kid's gifted to be a business tycoon. And so that's the challenging part. But in order to, and I'll say it like this, with my son, what I do with him, I sit down and I talk to him about issues that he's dealing with. It's been challenging. He's in that puberty stage now. And it's like trying to get him to open up and talk to me, because there's certain things, Dad, I don't want to talk to you about the girls now. And so I find myself contending for his trust, that there's no reprisal with anything he says.
That's so good. Thank you. Let's interact a little bit. Now, he's how old now, roughly?
He just turned 14.
Now, see that? The younger they are, the more tender they are, and the more trainable and malleable they are. Now, the landscape of parenting starts from the time that the child is what? Born. Think about what the enemy has done to the majority of us as parents in the early phase of the child's life, because this is not a lesson that was taught worldwide. Watch this. Most of us in the early years of having children, that's the beginning of our marriage. And those are the trouble years of relationship.
Wow.
So the focus is more on surviving the marriage than it is raising the child. Are you all with me now? That's
Yes,
why, again, you got to understand anything that's kingdom is going to be constantly under assault. And so we're in a growing phase. We're trying to progress. We're trying to learn ourselves. We just got married and realized that, oh my God, I got children. I don't even know me. How am I going to deal with a child? And how am I going to address this other person? I mean, now we're discovering things about, oh boy, I could have waited, right? Beautiful person, right person, wrong time. I needed more time to mature and to grow. Now, watch the child. The child suffers through that transition because they're left to who? Themselves.
Yeah.
And now that is what we call the period of unaccountability. There's no registering in the first 2 to 3 years of that child's life where there are parents who are constantly in warfare with each other. Do you all realize that? And during those times, that's when parents are more prone to backhand, to kick, come on now, to throw. Not because that's what they intend to do, but out of frustration.
Frustration, yeah.
Under pressure. Get out of my way, leave me alone. Oh, wait, did I tell you to wait? Now the child is just needing right now, but the parent right now is under attack.
Under duress, yeah.
So are you all seeing where I'm at? Now, notice what the devil did. He kept you consumed with your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, you see that? And your ignorance through that period of their growth. And now they need you, and you need them to know that you have what they need.
Right.
Guess what? That trust that needed to be transplanted in their heart about being able to talk to them transparently about everything. Because as you said, nobody outside the house is going to love you like who?
Like I do at the house.
Like I do. Like come on, we hear everything about you. But now all of a sudden, these people come into your child's life, and in a few days, they can convey a trust that you have not been able to establish over 13, 14 years. 15. Are you all listening to me? That's where we're losing the battle. That's what makes this lesson so important. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Now you finish it.
Oh no, I was pretty much wrapping up with that, Bishop, and that's been a thing. I'm back on the track now. I'm back on track, but just getting him to understand there's no reprisal here. There's times I have to say to him, son, just say what you got to say to me. Listen, like I'm putting daddy hat off right now. I'm not your buddy, I'm not your daddy, but we gonna talk because I have to help you because I want you to be successful. You should be launching off my shoulders and not out of my footsteps. And so what I need to do is find out where you are so I can assist you. And as of lately, he's been really more amiable to talk and really talk about things. The first couple of times he'll say something, look at me like, one eye will be like, okay, see if he's gonna react. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. It's kind of like Carmen was saying last week, like inside you're like, but the face is like, woosah, like, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting. You go in your bathroom, you scream, Lord Jesus, help me. And that's just what it is. It takes us to listen. And a lot of children have worked with youth a great portion of my life in ministry. A lot of children don't feel like they're listened to. They don't feel like they're heard. It's not a crime to listen to a child. It's a crime to let them run your household. But it's not a crime to learn to listen to them. And sometimes it's not just what they say, it's what they're not saying.
So is this, ladies, is this why we're saying that, is there the truth to it takes a village? Have we now, we haven't grown afraid of the village, have we?
I have counted on it. I mean, because there's, grandparents and aunts and uncles and sometimes teachers. Even, I think it's very important to be able to teach your children to be able to seek out help, whatever that help comes from, but giving them a sort of a sound foundation to know if an adult is a safe person for you to provide, and if that person's beliefs line up with the beliefs we have in our household, if that person is suitable to give you counsel. when we were talking before, I was kind of laughing to myself because I had the benefit of working with kids professionally before I've had my own children. And man, I learned a lot dealing with other people's middle schoolers. And I had worked with all grade levels, you know, just as a speech therapist. And you get to know kids because we work a lot of times one-on-one or, you know, maybe 3-to-1. And a lot of times I had the same kids over and over for years until they finish the program. So you really get to establish relationship with kids individually. So I learned a lot about children before I had children. And one of the things that I told my kids from a very early age, and I guess it might have been manipulative, I don't know. But I told them, do not count on your friends to give you good advice.
That's good.
If you want to know the truth, come ask me or ask your daddy. I will never lie to you.
Yeah.
And so that has been, I've heard that come back to me, you know, because they've tried asking their friends and the friends give them some dumb answers. And then they remember, okay, I just need to go ask, ask mama, ask daddy, ask auntie or grandmama, somebody that they can trust, or even church members have been, you know, supporters for my children as well. People they have learned that they can count on. And that village is priceless because you can't do it all. Your child's not going to tell you everything. You know, it's just not going to happen. You might think they're telling you everything, but I promise you they're not.
Right.
Well, Cindy, also, I'm here thinking about, and we're going to go to about 8:30 and that's it. But I'm thinking about what really helped me, Cindy, and this is this behavioral correspondence. For some reason, it must have been the will of God. I don't know what it was, but something prompted my parents to always get me the tools I needed to investigate myself, to explore me. I was probably the Christopher Columbus of myself. You know what I mean? I was always, I think I had, in school, it was hard for me to pay attention. You know, y'all know I came up with that thing about pay attention, because attention is something everyone can pay. Yeah. The only thing that's required of you to purchase a lesson is to pay attention. Well, that came to me. That's something that the Holy Spirit gave me because I had so much trouble staying. My mind was so ecstatically initiated that I was all over the place. So I probably had ADD, DDD, ABCD, EFG, you know, HIJ, you name it, I had it before they even came up with the assessment, Elgin. But the problem was, realistically, I needed to find my interests. It was not academics, and for me, it wasn't academics. Rhonda was, you know, you've heard my little corny thing. Rhonda graduated cum laude. I graduated cum laude quick. Cum laude. I really need you to redeem me. So realistically, she helped me find me. It was by something that I don't know. It's amazing how God uses us to intersect with each other, to happen upon destiny sometimes. Because I started drawing cars for her that later turned into birds and animals and wildlife pictures. And the next thing you know, I was winning art contests and getting these prizes. And all of a sudden, the teachers are interested in me. And now teachers love working with me with my handicap. You see that? So I don't even think that my siblings understood, nor my parents, my educational, my academic handicaps. But my teacher that really took liking to me named Miss Pilot. Isn't that something? Miss Pilot. What do you use a pilot for? To initiate the flame? And Miss Pilot pulled me aside and said, but you are the most persistent kid in the classroom. And for that, I will never forget. But she loved my art. So I would enjoy by drawing pictures for her. And she would just make sure I understood her subjects. And, you know, she would take the time. She said, you don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to worry. But listen, correspondence here. My parents gave me all the tools. I experimented with so much media. Listen, if I could go back right now, there are pieces I've got out over the world. Not just, I'm happy to say, I've got art pieces throughout the world. I know they're on about 4 different continents.
Wow.
Other than North America and South America. They're throughout Europe, Asia, Africa, etc. But listen, I've got pieces all over the place that I wish I could buy back from my youth. Yes, there's one picture in particular of a bird that's what is it, the beak, the parakeet.
Toucan.
Parakeet.
Yeah. Oh man, listen, I was in the 5th grade, and I'm telling you, the moss on the limb and the actual the what you call it, tandems or whatever, the where he held his feet, embracing the
Talons.
Talons, yeah, with those long nails and all, and then just the hair, the fur. I can feel it when I think about that illustration. I would love to have it right now. I remember finishing it and saying, God, you used me for this? This is what I'm saying. So the parent, my life ended up being a subject of correspondence rather than, watch this, a need for discipline. So even though my mind was active, I had the tools to embellish my gifts. You see that? So by the time I was in the 11th grade, I won a scholarship to the University of Kansas for art, and it satisfied the demand. You see that now? For my time, I was just enjoying drawing and illustrating. I got portraits. I've got a stack of pictures there. I've done, oh my God, I've done so many portraits I did not even realize of people. When you're dealing with hundreds of portraits, over 1,000 portraits, you're talking about a lot of art. I'm telling you, man. So the thing I'm trying to say here is getting the kids. I think what I really want to say in this point is personal interest is the cure for lifestyle conformance. How about this? Is that a good way to say that?
Yeah.
Personal interest. It will hold your attention, the child's attention, and they will keep themselves busy. Y'all take that from me. Just you all finish it up. I didn't mean to take up so much time, but I get to talking about that. And that's what really just gets my heart to beating. Right now, I can get up off, I can leave here. And if I don't have any other demands for my time, I can sit down and draw a masterpiece. I mean, I'm not talking about some piece of art that's meaningless that no one wants. I can do something that all 3 of you would desire to have in your homes right now. I can talk to you for a few minutes and learn what you like and literally illustrate it in a few days and bring it back to you. And I don't have to worry about whether you'll purchase it or not, because God gave me that gift.
Yeah. So
that's the thing. I have it now. God is my source. This is what I mean. It is He who gives us the what? Our gift. Well, how many children know that they can depend on God if they get their giftings and their skills from Him? Learn of their essence and learn of their uniqueness. Okay, go ahead. You got it.
Bishop, I think that's a really good point to, close on or to end on, just challenging the parents to start looking at the children, identifying the gifts, identifying their special interests, because for so long, children were told what you're going to do, what you're going to become, and some things are non-negotiables. Right. And I consider myself a child's advocate in a lot of ways, because I was a child that was pushed in the wrong direction by my parents. And I knew that I wanted to be in business. I knew I wanted to be a businesswoman. I knew that education, in the sense of where they were trying to push me, was not my answer. And then when I decided to drop out of college, I had to take up a trade, and through rebellion, I took the worst trade in the world, and I was so good at that I spiked my own self. I took up welding because my dad was like, if you're not gonna finish school, then you're gonna take up a trade. And
You kidding me, Cindy? You took
I was a welder, a very good welder. To this day, I'm an excellent welder.
wow.
And yes, and I mean, it was really could have been a not a career, but a job because it paid so well. And the type of welder I was, it took a special skill to make a tiny a bead that is so small and so uniform. And so, you know, and I mastered that, and then I got so mad until I quit because I was really doing it to be mean. But, you know, from that point on, you know, I just try to encourage parents not to push the children in the direction you want them to go, but be a parent and encourage them in whatever direction you see the Lord or their giftings or what corresponds with them, because that is so important. You know, we can end with this story, this movie I watched the other night, and the son killed both his parents. The son shot both his parents, and this is a true story, shot both his parents and his brother. And growing up, the children were raised very well, not spoiled. They came from a Christian background. And so when they finally, the mother and brother died, but the father survived the shooting. And the son, of course, he survived the shooting. And when they interviewed this young man and they asked him, why did he want to kill his parents? And the reason he wanted to kill his parents is because he felt like he could never, ever measure up to their expectations. And I know this can go somewhere else. So let's just stay with this. He can never measure up to their expectations of him, but his brother could, because his brother was very academically smart. And so what happened the night before he shot his parents, they had a graduation dinner for him at a restaurant. But the truth of the matter is the son had dropped out of school in his last year, had dropped out of school a long time ago, basically. So he was hiding the fact that he was on academic probation and he was not graduating, and he felt like a failure. Now, to his father, this is why his father said, I can forgive my son, because to his father, in his father's eyes, his father just basically wanted what was best for both of his children. And he figured a good education would take them in the right direction. But he never once asked them what did they want. And you can't blame a parent for wanting what's best for their children. So the father now, hindsight, he see where he was really kind of pushing them and having an expectation that this one son could not meet. But just to think about, that's the only reason why he wanted his parents dead, because he did not want to be a failure to them. And from the father's perspective, if he just would have taken a little bit more time, paid a little more attention, then all of this could have been prevented. So just in closing, tonight, Bishop, you've given so many options for how to reprimand, how to start building that rod of correction. You've given us you're not just, I always say, telling is not teaching. So you're not just telling us, but you're giving us a route as parents, a different route, because you can tell them the rod means something else and leave it up to people to go figure out for themselves. But you're giving us some direction on what that rod is. So now we have the opportunity to start building that rod with our children. I think it's such a good place, because a lot of us are parents home with our children, and instead of seeing them as that demon seed or the devil using my child, or Satan, I rebuke you, you're gonna get out of here. Just use that energy to start reshaping what has gone wrong. Use the time wisely. So that's basically it. And on that note, just want to thank everyone, especially those comments. If y'all saw me laughing or snickering a few times, Sheena and Cheryl, thank you guys for supporting me about that rod. Cheryl said she didn't have to get as many
No,
beatings and
Cheryl didn't get many whippings at all.
right. And Sheena said she didn't either. I'm afraid of getting a spanking, so I was scared straight, I
Cheryl
was
was
scared.
spoiled. Hey, tell her Cheryl, I said she was spoiled.
Yes, Cheryl was in agreement. Yes. And so I thank God for all of those
She
comments.
learned from all three of us.
You get a chance, you go back and read them. It was kind of funny. And Annie was agreeing with something Trina said earlier, but anyway, just kind of made me snicker because we can identify with the different ways that we were raised, and we all can identify with whippings. I don't like to hear my sisters talk about it because I was like, there's no way my father would have y'all go out to the woods and get a switch.
Oh my God.
No,
I had to go find the belt, go get the switch, break it. Oh my, and then sometimes grandma would say, are you gonna insult me like that? You had to go get another one and tie them together. Oh my God.
Oh, you brought this little one back. So I'm glad I kind of skipped that. Being the youngest, I always tell my parents, by the time y'all got to me, y'all were tired from 5 other children. So I got away with everything.
That's probably true.
Yes. So
Hey,
guys, on that note,
make sure you remind them about Thursday night, Matilda, and
Yes. So yes, be with us. Today is Tuesday. I have to go through what day it is because I'm used to being here on a Thursday. But yes, guys, we're here for our masterclass each and every Tuesday, but we have something very, very special for you on Thursdays. On second and fourth Thursdays, we have our Life After Grief and Loss, and you got a chance to witness those awesome conversations last week. Well, starting this week, which is going to be the third Thursday, we are going to be introducing you to our leader of our Christian education department, and we're going to be having discussions on correcting your kingdom foundation. I was like trying to put another word there, kingdom principles, correcting your kingdom foundation. I'm looking forward to it. So if you think that your life has gotten off course and you want to go back and get some things in order and kind of undergird that foundation, sometimes you can't lay another one, it'd be too much trouble, but you can correct the foundation that you have, which is what a lot of us are doing right now today, correcting the foundation. Then I encourage you to tune in on tomorrow night at 7 to see what it's all about. It will be in panel format, so the same way it is tonight, and you will get an opportunity to submit your questions. So we want you all to come back and join us. And then I would be remiss if I did not extend to you the opportunity to sow into Crown Kingdom Cultural Center Ministries. And as you know, you can do that by going to our website, www.fbjm.org. And there are many opportunities there for you to sow, and sow intentionally and sow with a purpose. Name that seed. If you want to sow directly into Bishop Bush, then you can sow to him through his Cash App, which is the $ Finest Bush Jr. And then if you're watching us live on YouTube, I went ahead earlier today and I used my phone. So whenever you see, oh man, I can't even think what it's called now. The little
describe
barcode.
Yes, that little similar to a barcode. Yet the little barcode, just turn on your camera, and when you fit that barcode in that square, it's going to take you directly to Bishop's Cash App. So you don't even have to worry about making sure you spell his name correctly. So
QRC code, Cindy, QRC code.
QRC code, QRC. They all look the same, but they're all different. Isn't that something? They're like a fingerprint. That's what it reminds me of. QRC code. Yes, just turn on your camera, put it in front of that QRC code, and we'll take you directly to Bishop's Cash App. I had to try it out, Bishop, today. I was like, let me make sure it will at least work.
Beautiful.
So on that note, we want to say God bless you to each and every one of you. Thank you for viewing. Make sure you have a watch party share this information, invite someone to come in. Be blessed. See you on tomorrow night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you all so much, ladies.